The hospital basement. I worked as a night shift nurse for almost 3 years, and most nights were uneventful. The hospital at 2 a.m. is like a different world, quiet, sterile, almost peaceful. But peace has a way of turning into something else in the middle of the night, something you can't quite explain. The basement was my least favorite assignment. That's where the morgue was kept, along with rows of storage rooms for old equipment and supplies. Few people went down there after dark unless they absolutely had to. Still, when the head nurse asked me to check on a malfunctioning light fixture near the morgue, I grabbed my clipboard and headed down. The elevator doors opened with a dull groan, and I stepped into a corridor lit by flickering fluorescence. The air was different down there, thicker, colder, like the walls were holding their breath. I told myself it was just because of the refrigeration units in the morgue, but the feeling stayed. As I walked, the lights overhead buzzed and flickered, plunging the hall into brief pockets of darkness. In one of those moments, I heard something, a faint sound, like wheels rolling slowly across tile. When the lights steadied again, the hall was empty. I exhaled, forcing a laugh. Probably just a gurney someone left unlocked, I whispered to myself. Still, curiosity tugged at me. I followed the sound toward the morgue. The steel doors stood shut, but the little window in the center of one door revealed something odd, shadows shifting across the floor, even though no one should have been inside. I pulled the door open, the cold air rushing out to meet me. The room was lined with stainless steel drawers, each one labeled, some holding the bodies of people who'd passed earlier that week. In the center of the room, a stretcher sat alone, wheels still trembling slightly as if it had just been moved. "Hello." My voice echoed against the tile walls. No answer. That's when I heard it. A whisper, barely audible, like air escaping a vent, but too distinct to mistake. It was coming from one of the body bags. My first instinct was denial. It's just the refrigeration fans. It's just your mind playing tricks. But then the whisper sharpened into words, rasping and weak. "Help me." Every hair on my body stood up. My hands shook as I approached the stretcher. The black body bag lay zipped to the top, still, unmoving. Yet the whisper came again, this time clearer. "Please, help." I froze. If it was a mistake, if someone had been sealed inside alive, every second mattered. Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I grabbed the zipper and slowly dragged it down. At first, I saw only pale skin, then eyes open, wide, alive. The man inside gasped, his lips quivering as if frozen. "They put me here." His voice cracked like dry paper. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my clipboard. "You're alive," I shouted, fumbling for the intercom on the wall. But as I pressed the button, static hissed back at me, dead silence on the other end. I turned back toward the stretcher, ready to help him sit up, but he was gone. The bag lay open, empty. Cold swept over me in a wave so strong, I nearly collapsed. I searched every corner of the morgue, every drawer, every inch of the hallway. Nothing. The man had vanished. Shaken, I returned upstairs, reporting nothing but malfunctioning lights. Who would believe me otherwise? But that wasn't the end. The next night, as I started my shift, a fellow nurse handed me a chart. A new patient had been admitted to the ICU, a man in his 50s. No ID found, collapsed outside the hospital. She pointed to his photo clipped to the file. I nearly dropped it. It was the same man from the morgue, same pale skin, same hollow eyes. Only this time, the photo had been taken hours after I saw him vanish. I never went back to the basement alone again. The gas station stranger. I used to work the night shift at a small gas station off the highway. It was one of those lonely spots, surrounded by fields, with only the occasional truck roaring past in the dark. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and most nights were painfully boring. A few customers here and there, some drunks looking for cigarettes, truckers needing coffee. But then came the night I still can't explain. It was around 3 a.m. when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up from my phone to see a man step inside. He didn't look unusual at first, mid-40s maybe, wearing a dusty jacket, a baseball cap pulled low. But there was something off about him, something I couldn't pin down. He didn't go to the aisles. He just stood by the door for a moment, staring at me. Evening," I said, trying to sound casual. He tilted his head, almost like he was studying me. Then, slowly, he walked up to the counter. His boots echoed on the tile even though he moved softly, too softly for the sound they made. "Coffee?" he muttered. His voice was raspy, dry, like he hadn't spoken in days. I pointed toward the machine. Right there by the wall. Man, help yourself. But he didn't move. He just kept staring at me with these glassy eyes that seemed wrong. Not drunk, not high, just empty. Then he leaned closer over the counter and whispered, "You shouldn't be here tonight." I blinked. "What? You shouldn't be here," he repeated, his lips curling into something between a smile and a grimace. My stomach tightened. "Look, man, if you're trying to mess with me, you need to." The lights cut out. Total darkness swallowed the station. The hum of the refrigerators, the buzzing of the ceiling lights all went silent. I fumbled for the flashlight I kept under the counter, my pulse hammering in my ears. When the beam flicked on, the man was gone. The door hadn't chimed. No footsteps, nothing. He just wasn't there anymore. I hurried to the front entrance, scanning the lot, the pumps, the empty road, the field stretching into blackness. No cars, no movement, just silence. Then, behind me, I heard the bell above the door ring again. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the dark. The door hadn't moved. It was still locked, the glass reflecting my own pale face, but the bell had rung clear as day. I stood frozen, my chest tight, flashlight trembling in my grip. Then I noticed something on the counter where the man had stood. A coffee cup. It was old, cracked porcelain, not the disposable cups we stocked. Steam curled faintly from the black liquid inside. I backed away, heart hammering, and ran outside into the parking lot, gulping fresh air like I was drowning. My manager arrived an hour later, furious that I'd locked up early. I tried to explain, but stopped halfway through. Who would believe me? But that wasn't the end. A week later, a highway patrol officer came into the station. He asked if I'd seen anything unusual around 3 a.m. the previous Friday. I hesitated, then asked why. He sighed. "We found a wreck a few miles down the road. Pickup truck went off the embankment. Driver didn't make it." I felt my stomach drop. When he showed me the license photo, my hands went cold. It was the same man, the dusty jacket, the baseball cap, those glassy eyes. According to the report, he'd died hours before I saw him walk into the station. I quit the job a month later. But every time I drive past that stretch of highway, I glance at the lot. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I swear I see him standing there, just watching. The security guard's last shift. I was 28 when I got the job as a night shift security guard at Brookstone Mall. It wasn't glamorous, but the pay was steady, and the work was simple. Patrol the empty halls, watch the cameras, write up a report. The place had been struggling for years, and at night, it felt like a ghost town. I didn't mind the silence. In fact, at first, I liked it. I'd walk the wide corridors with only my footsteps echoing against the walls, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of old pipes. Sometimes I'd sit in the control room with a coffee, flipping between the dozens of black and white camera feeds. The worst part was the mannequins. The clothing stores left them standing in their windows, perfectly still, their eyeless faces lit by dim security lights. More than once, I thought I saw them shift positions when I looked away, but nothing prepared me for my last shift. The first sighting, it was just past 1 a.m. when I noticed her, on camera 4, overlooking the food court. A little girl was standing in the middle of the empty floor. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Long hair, a simple dress, her arms dangling loosely by her sides. I leaned forward, squinting at the monitor. No one was supposed to be there. The mall was locked up tight. I switched to camera 5 for another angle. She was still there, standing perfectly still, her head tilted slightly. I couldn't see her face, her hair covered it. "Great," I muttered. Some idiot parent left their kid behind. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and headed down the hall. The food court was only a few minutes away, but when I got there, the wide space was empty. The tables and chairs sat in neat rows, the fountains dark and dry. No girl. I swept my light across the tiled floor, checked behind the counters, even called out, "Hello, kid, you're not supposed to be here." "Hello." My voice echoed back at me, sharp and hollow. Uneasy, I returned to the control room. Maybe she'd slipped away while I was walking there, but when I checked the cameras again, my stomach dropped. She was back, standing in the same spot in the food court. The game begins this time. I didn't leave the control room. I just stared at the monitor, my pulse pounding in my ears. Slowly, the girl turned her head. For the first time, I saw her face. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her eyes were enormous to large for her head and completely black. No whites, no irises, just endless darkness. I jerked back from the screen, heart hammering. When I looked again, she was gone. One by one, I flipped through the cameras. Hallways, entrances, escalators, nothing. And then, on camera 7, covering the Toy Story, saw her again. She was closer this time, standing right in front of the glass, staring in at the shelves of dolls and stuffed animals. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The way she stood there, perfectly still. Her reflection warped in the glass, it was too much like one of the mannequins come to life. I grabbed the radio, my hand shaking. This is Unit 12, requesting backup at Brookstone Mall. Possible trespasser. Static hissed back at me. No response. I tried again. Still nothing. The mall was too far from town for good reception. I was on my own. The whisper on the radio, I decided to stay put. I locked the control room door and kept my eyes on the monitors. My shift was only a few more hours. If I could just wait it out until sunrise, everything would be fine. At least, that's what I told myself. But then my radio crackled. I froze. The line hissed with static. Then a faint sound emerged. A child's giggle. Tag, a little voice whispered. I dropped the radio onto the desk, my skin crawling. My breath fogged in the cold air as I stared at the cameras again. On camera 3, I saw movement. The girl was no longer in the toy store. She was in the hallway outside the security office. My hallway. The knock on the door, the control room door, rattled with a sudden knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I stumbled back, knocking over my chair. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice breaking. Silence. Another knock. This time, softer. I backed into the corner, clutching my flashlight like a weapon. The monitors flickered, static washing over the feeds. When they cleared, my blood ran cold. Every camera showed the same image. The girl, standing outside the control room door, her head tilted, her black eyes unblinking. And then, slowly, she lifted her hand and waved. The final transmission. I don't remember much after that. My memory comes in flashes, like fragments of a nightmare. The door creaking open, the sound of small, bare feet on the floor, the smell of dust and mildew, and the voice, that voice, whispering right in my ear, "You're it." When my coworker came in the next morning, he found the control room empty. My flashlight was lying on the floor, my chair was tipped over, and my radio was still on, hissing faintly with static. He swears he heard something else too, a child's laughter. The aftermath. They searched for me for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers, nothing. No sign of me anywhere in the mall or beyond. But here's the thing, I'm still there. Not in the way you'd expect, not flesh and blood, not anymore. But sometimes, if you walk the mall late at night, you might feel it. A breath on your neck, a laugh in the distance, a figure on the cameras that vanishes when you check in person. The girl never really wanted to play tag with me. I think she wanted someone to join her. Now, I'm part of her game. And every night, when the mall is dark and empty, I wait with her. For the next guard. For the next shift. For the next